Hello.
In the last segment, we talked about the bargaining for time that Nebuchadnezzar identifies that the wise men of Babylon are already engaged in by saying, no, we don't claim inspiration, we don't claim to know what your dream was, but we will interpret it for you. According to verse 4, they say, tell the dream to your servants and we will declare the interpretation. So they're bold to say, we know how to interpret your dream.
Yeah.
And so, again, when we see Daniel's response later to the same dream, or to the same challenge, we should say, how does he respond to it? Well, we can see the Magi at least think that they have this divine gift. When we get to verse 8, you see the king insisting that no, you're just stalling for time. And by the time you get to verse 11, they are desperate. So they say, the thing which the king demands is difficult, and there's no one else who could declare it to the king except gods, or the sons of the gods.
Yeah. So the king had been actually wise in giving them these two things, because then he would know if they gave him an interpretation because they knew what the dream was, then he would have felt pretty safe in believing them.
Yeah.
But with him having to tell them the dream, he didn't know whether he could really feel any satisfaction that this was truth.
Right. So Nebuchadnezzar doesn't waffle in his stance. It says in verse 12, because of this the king became indignant and very furious, and gave orders to destroy all the wise men of Babylon.
Yeah.
So Daniel now is the last refuge, as it were, of the wise men of Babylon. After all, he's the chief of them.
Yeah.
So let's see how he responds to the challenge.
Yeah, because the king has seen that they're really pretty useless because they can't do what he's asked.
So in the next 4 or so verses, we have the narration going to, Arioch again, same character we've met before in analyzing chapter 2 last time, informs Daniel about this matter, and he's the go-between. And Daniel says, rather than, well, I know what to do, what does he do?
He goes in to the king and asks for time to seek out from God the vision. Like, he's not fudging that. He's not hesitating. He believes God will give him that information.
Yeah, but he doesn't presume it.
Yeah.
He goes to God.
And he asked his companions to pray also that God would reveal this to them.
Yeah, notice in verse 17 too, an incidental point, the Hebrew names of the 3 companions are given.
Right.
Rather than the Babylonian names, because of the intimacy of their situation as Jews in the middle of Babylon.
Right.
So they request in verse 18 compassion from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his friends might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon.
Yeah.
And I think verses 20 to 21, 23 rather, reveal the heart of Daniel, as well as his insight and the unique wisdom he has from God, the heart of him as well as a man of God. The spirit that's in him is not the spirit that's in the watchtower. What would the watchtower do with the wise men of Babylon had they the power?
Oh, well, yeah, they viewed them they would have viewed them as the enemy and as deserving of death. But yeah, he wants to show some compassion to them. So he does make a request on their behalf. He's going to speak as chief of the Magi. He's going to speak on behalf of them all. And he wants them protected as well as himself.
Yeah.
Well, that's a different spirit than the watchtower has.
Yeah, in verse 24, and it's a great talking point, I think, with witnesses, which is, what does he say to Arioch after he's received the interpretation from God and the vision and what he's asked for from God? He says, don't destroy the wise men of Babylon.
Yeah.
Take me into the king's presence and I will declare the interpretation to the king.
Yeah.
So part of his heart in doing this, his desire, is to save these people with whom he would have severe theological disagreements.
Right. Yeah.
But it shows you his goodwill towards these men who were benighted, not for the reasons that he and Hebrews would be benighted. They'd be benighted by choice, but people in Babylon.
He doesn't view himself as superior because he knows he wouldn't know this either.
Yeah.
He would have been in the same position as them, except that God has given him that information. at his request.
So by the time you get to verse 26, now Arioch has ushered Daniel back into the presence of Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar says, "Are you able," or competent, I think the newer translation says, "Are you competent to make known to me the dream and its interpretation?"
Yeah. So does he pass both tests?
Yeah. And well, we know what the dream is about, and I think by the time you get to verse 29, he who reveals mysteries has made known to you what will take place. Now he's very confident. He has inspiration or revelation from God, and he also has the official interpretation. So I think verse 30 for me is a wonderful summary of the certainty that comes with men of God, prophets as they are authentically or accredited in the Bible. This is the kind of authority they should display. As for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me for any wisdom residing in me more than in any other living man. So he claims no prophetic status even.
He shows humility.
And then he says, "But for the purpose of making the interpretation known to the king, and that you may understand the thoughts of your mind." So the humility is very marked. The generosity of spirit is marked, even that he wants to spare the wise men of Babylon.
So the way he even frames it is that God has revealed this to you, Nebuchadnezzar, who is called God's servant, right? He's given you this revelation, not he gave me this revelation and I'm going to tell you because I'm God's chosen voice. No, he's revealed something to you. At my request, he's told me what it is so I can give you the interpretation.
And as a side point we should mark in concluding this segment, this is one of the reasons that Daniel is not put among the prophets in the Hebrew canon, because he claimed no status as a prophet. He did not claim, "Thus says the Lord."
Right.
He's in a different, almost unique category, like Joseph in Egypt. He's a wise man in the court of the king or the emperor.
Right. Yeah.
So in the Hebrew canon, Daniel is among the writings at the end of the Old Testament.
And Daniel doesn't get the dream. It's the king that has the dreams.
Yeah.
And in Joseph's case, the same thing. He doesn't have the dream. The revelation is given to the Pharaoh. He just interprets it.
Yeah. We don't really think of that distinction. So when you analyze the prophetic status of the watchtower, what do you have? Do they pass the pretest, first of all? Would they even be in the court of the king because they have credentials?
No, because they've been very down on higher education. They have no scholars. They're completely reliant on other people to get any information, and then they usually don't credit them either.
So would they pass test number 1 of the official test that Nebuchadnezzar puts down?
No divine inspiration.
No claim of inspiration or revelation.
Yeah.
Do they pass test number 2? Well, only those who know the history of the watchtower would be able to answer that.
Their track record. You'd have to look at their track record. And if I recall correctly, in one of their articles that we used in the 200-page documentation, actually says that check our track record. Well, we did that. And you got 0, so...
A perfect record?
A perfect record.
Yeah, we'll get into that next time as we press on through the rest of the chapter, looking for how God accredits a true prophet.